It started as the perfect sleepover. 5 friends, Maya, Jess, Callie, Rhea, and Brooke, piled into Jess's spacious living room, the coffee table laden with snacks and soda, horror movies cued on the TV. Jess's parents were away for the weekend, leaving the girls to giggle and whisper without interruption. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows of the old Victorian house. It was the kind of night made for ghost stories, and by the third movie, their chatter turned to local legends. "Let's play shadow tag," Maya suggested, a mischievous glint in her eye. Rhea groaned. "That's just asking for nightmares." "Exactly," Maya said, grinning. "We're supposed to be scared, right? The rules are simple: turn off the lights, use a flashlight, and try to tag each other's shadows." The others hesitated, but Jess, eager to prove her bravery, grabbed a flashlight. "Fine. Let's do it." The girls scattered through the house, laughing nervously as Jess switched off the lights. The only illumination came from the flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. The game started innocently enough, with shrieks and giggles echoing through the halls. Halfway through, Brooke froze in the upstairs hallway, her flashlight shaking slightly. She thought she saw something, a shadow darting out of her beam, just at the edge of her vision. "Hey, who's there?" she called, her voice tight. Nobody answered. She laughed nervously, trying to shake the feeling. Creepy house vibes, that's all. She turned to head back to the living room but paused. At the end of the hall was a figure, a dark, unmoving silhouette. Too tall to be one of the girls. "Jess?" Brooke called softly, though she already knew it wasn't her. The shadow twitched unnaturally, like it was trying to step forward but couldn't quite manage. Brooke's breath hitched as her flashlight flickered, plunging her into sudden darkness. "Guys," she screamed, dropping the flashlight and bolting back downstairs. The others met her in the living room, their faces lit by the eerie glow of Jess's phone flashlight. Brooke babbled about the shadow, but Maya just rolled her eyes. "It's probably just your imagination," Maya said. "Or maybe you saw your own shadow." "Chill." "No," Brooke insisted, shaking. "It wasn't, it moved." Rhea glanced toward the darkened hallway. "Okay, maybe we should stop playing. This house is kind of creepy." Jess, trying to save face, shook her head. "Nothing's wrong. The shadows are supposed to move, this is shadow tag, remember?" But the girls agreed to stick to the safety of the living room. They turned on every lamp they could, bundling together on the couch with bowls of popcorn, trying to laugh off the tension. That's when they heard the thud. It came from upstairs. A heavy, deliberate sound, like something falling, or someone walking. The girls froze, exchanging wide-eyed glances. "Okay, Jess," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly, "are you sure no one else is home?" "I swear," Jess replied, but her own voice was tight now. The thud came again, closer this time, as if descending the stairs. Each slow, measured footstep reverberated through the house. Brooke was the first to whisper what they were all thinking. "It's not one of us." The girls huddled closer as the sound stopped abruptly. Then came a soft, scratching noise at the edge of the living room door. A whisper followed, faint but unmistakable. "Let me in." Callie, the most timid of the group, began to cry softly, her hands clamped over her mouth. Jess grabbed a fire poker from the hearth, her knuckles white as she held it in front of her. "We're calling the cops," Rhea said, fumbling with her phone. But when she tried to dial, her phone buzzed with an error message, "No service." "Impossible," Rhea muttered. "Jess," Maya hissed, eyes darting toward the dark corner of the room, "something's there." They all turned to look. At first, it was nothing, just shadows cast by the dim lamps. But then one moved, detaching itself from the wall, stretching impossibly tall. It leaned forward, and the whisper came again. "Let me in." Screaming, Jess swung the fire poker at the shadow. It passed through the air with no resistance, but the lights flickered violently, plunging them into complete darkness. Chaos erupted. The girls scrambled, screaming for one another in the pitch black. Brooke's voice cut through the cacophony. "It's here. It's right here." A sound like wind rushing filled the room, accompanied by a bone-deep cold. One of the girls, Rhea, Jess couldn't tell, was yanked backward with a strangled cry. The others ran blindly for the door, Brooke throwing it open and bursting into the snowy night. When the police arrived hours later, Jess, Brooke, and Maya were found shivering on the front porch, unable to explain what had happened. The living room was empty, no sign of Callie or Rhea. But the officers noticed something else. On the walls, floors, and ceiling, smeared into the wallpaper like soot, were 5 human-shaped shadows, one larger than the rest. When they tried to scrub the marks away, they wouldn't budge. The plan was simple, a classic sleepover at Lily's house to celebrate her 14th birthday. Her parents were out of town, and her older brother, Jake, was supposed to be in charge. But Jake was a chronic slacker who spent most of his time in his room playing video games, leaving Lily and her 3 best friends, Emma, Chloe, and Ava, to their own devices. It was a cold, rainy December night. The girls gathered in Lily's living room, cozy under blankets, a crackling fire warming the space. They'd stocked up on snacks, turned off all the lights, and started telling scary stories. Emma was halfway through a story about a haunted doll when Ava interrupted. "These are all baby stories. Let's do something real." "Like what?" Lily asked, narrowing her eyes. Ava grinned. "The Midnight Pact." The name alone sent a shiver down Lily's spine. She had heard about it, everyone in their town had. It was a creepy childhood ritual passed down through generations. "You don't actually believe in that, do you?" Chloe scoffed, pulling her blanket tighter. "It's just a game," Ava said with a shrug. "You light a candle, chant a little rhyme, and invite a spirit to join you. Then you wait until midnight and ask it to show itself. It's harmless, if you follow the rules. And if you don't?" Lily asked quietly. Ava leaned forward, her face lit by the dim glow of the fire. "They say if you break the rules, the spirit stays. Forever." The room fell silent except for the sound of rain pattering against the windows. Despite her better judgment, Lily felt the allure of it, the thrill of doing something taboo. It didn't take much coaxing for all 4 of them to sit in a circle on the living room floor. Ava placed a single candle in the center, its flame flickering as if it sensed what was coming. "The rules are simple," Ava said, lighting the candle. "Don't let the candle go out. Don't leave the circle. And whatever happens, don't speak to the spirit directly." She recited the chant, her voice low and rhythmic. "Spirit of the night, we invite you near. Show us your presence, make yourself clear. Enter this space, but do us no harm. We ask for a sign, a glimpse, a charm." The fire popped in the hearth, making them all jump. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, somewhere upstairs, a faint thud echoed. Lily stiffened. "Jake?" Ava smirked. "It's starting." They waited in uneasy silence as the clock ticked toward midnight. Every creak of the old house sounded amplified, every shadow seemed to stretch unnaturally. "Probably just Jake," Chloe whispered, her voice brittle. But when the clock struck 12, the temperature in the room plummeted. The fire in the hearth sputtered, though it didn't go out. The candle's flame wavered violently, but somehow held. Ava grinned nervously. "Okay, so maybe it's..." A sharp knock cut her off. It came from the front door, 3 deliberate raps that sent shivers through all of them. Lily swallowed hard. Who would be out there in this weather? Emma shook her head. "Don't open it. No one should be." Another knock. "Harder this time, Jake." Lily called, hoping her brother had finally stopped gaming and decided to play a prank. But Jake didn't respond. The knocking stopped, replaced by a dragging sound, as if someone, or something, was scraping against the walls outside. "I'm done," Chloe said, standing abruptly. "No," Ava snapped. "You can't leave the circle. You'll break the rules." Chloe hesitated, but before she could argue, a cold voice whispered from the shadows, "Why did you invite me?" The girls froze. Ava's bravado crumbled. We didn't mean." "Rules," the voice hissed, closer now. The candle flickered again, and they all turned toward it just as the flame stretched unnaturally high, casting grotesque, shifting shadows on the walls. One shadow didn't belong to them. It was taller, thin and contorted, with long fingers that seemed to claw at the edges of the room. The dragging sound continued, now coming from inside the house. Lily's heart pounded as she clutched Ava's arm. "End it. Make it go away." Ava shook her head, panic in her wide eyes. I don't know how. It's supposed to leave on its own." The whisper returned, circling the group. "You called me. You broke the rules." "Chloe, sit back down." Emma cried. But it was too late. Chloe had stepped out of the circle. The instant her foot touched the floor beyond the rug, the dragging sound stopped, and the shadows disappeared. Relieved, Chloe turned to face them. "See? Nothing happened." Her scream was cut short. Something yanked her violently into the darkness beyond the firelight, so fast they couldn't see what it was. "Chloe!" Lily screamed, but her friend was gone. The dragging sound resumed, now louder, more deliberate. The remaining three girls clung to each other, paralyzed with fear. "We have to end the game," Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. Ava grabbed the candle and blew it out. For a moment, the silence was deafening. Then came a laugh, low and guttural, echoing from all directions. "You can't end it," the voice said. "Not now." The shadows returned, darker and more solid, creeping toward the circle. Suddenly, the living room lights flickered back on. Jake stood in the doorway, headphones around his neck, looking annoyed. "What the hell is all this screaming about?" The girls whipped their heads around, but the shadows were gone. The room was exactly as it had been before the game started, except for one horrifying detail. Chloe was still missing. The circle on the floor, once unbroken, now had a gap where she had stepped out. Days turned into weeks, but Chloe was never found. Her parents plastered missing posters all over town, but the other girls didn't dare tell anyone what had really happened. The candle and the rug were thrown away, but at night, when Lily tried to sleep, she swore she could still hear the dragging sound. And on especially quiet nights, she could hear Chloe's voice whispering from the shadows. "Why did you let me go?" Kayla, Maddie, Sarah, and Jess had planned this sleepover for weeks. It was their final one before they all went their separate ways after high school. Kayla's parents were away for the weekend, and the house, a large creaky Victorian on the edge of the woods, was theirs alone. The night began innocently enough, with movies and snacks sprawled out on the living room floor. They laughed, reminisced, and took selfies under fairy lights strung along the walls. By midnight, the air had a nostalgic warmth, filled with the bond of friendship. "Remember when we tried that Ouija board back in 8th grade?" Jess asked, grinning mischievously. Sarah rolled her eyes. "That was so fake. You were totally pushing it." "Was I?" Jess said with a teasing smirk. "Let's find out," Maddie said, pulling something from her bag. She grinned as she revealed a new, shiny Ouija board. Kayla shook her head. "No way. Not in my house. This place is creepy enough already. Come on, one last hurrah." Maddie pleaded. The others chimed in, and Kayla reluctantly agreed. "Fine. But just for a few minutes." They turned off all the lights except a single dim lamp, sat around the board, and placed their fingertips on the planchette. "Is there anyone here with us?" Maddie asked, her voice mockingly dramatic. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planchette began to move. "Stop pushing," Sarah said. "I'm not." Maddie shot back. The piece slid slowly to yes. "See? You're totally doing it," Sarah scoffed. Jess leaned closer. "Who are you?" The planchette paused, then spelled out, "FRAND." Kayla laughed nervously. "Great, we've got Casper." Maddie asked the next question. "What do you want?" The planchette hesitated, then moved, "Stay." A chill ran through the room. Sarah crossed her arms. "All right, that's enough. Let's watch another movie or something." But as they pulled their fingers away, the planchette jerked sharply to the center of the board, sending a shrill scraping sound through the room. "What the hell?" Jess whispered, her voice trembling. Then the lamp flickered and went out. Kayla scrambled to turn on the living room lights, but they didn't work. Darkness consumed the room. The only light came from the faint glow of the phone screens in their laps. Maddie nervously laughed. "Okay, good prank. Who rigged the lights?" Nobody answered. The sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs. They all froze. Kayla turned toward the stairwell. "Jake," she called, though her brother wasn't home. The footsteps grew louder, descending slowly. Jess clutched Maddie's arm. "Maybe it's your parents." "They're out of town," Kayla whispered. Sarah shone her phone's flashlight toward the staircase. The beam barely reached the bottom step before sputtering and dying. The others tried their phones, but every flashlight refused to work. Then came the voice. "Stay." It was soft, yet deep enough to rattle the walls. Something moved in the corner of the living room. It was shadow-like, but unnaturally thick and black, as if it absorbed all the light around it. The girls huddled together, hearts racing. "What do we do?" Maddie whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Run," Jess hissed. As if on cue, the front door slammed shut. The temperature dropped, and their breath became visible in the air. The voice came again, louder now, "Stay." They bolted for the kitchen door, but before they could reach it, the shadow leapt. It didn't move like a person, it didn't walk or run. It surged, like ink spreading in water, blocking their path. Maddie screamed as something cold brushed her arm, leaving a faint red mark. Kayla yanked open the pantry door. "In here." The girls scrambled inside, pulling the door shut behind them. They huddled in silence, shaking, as the heavy footsteps approached. Then came the scratching. Slow and deliberate, it trailed across the pantry door. Kayla covered her mouth, stifling a sob. "It's just a prank," she mouthed, though she didn't believe it. The scratching stopped. And then, in the dark, something whispered, "You broke the pact." Maddie whimpered. What pact?" The shadow seeped through the crack under the door like smoke, filling the pantry. They couldn't scream, the cold suffocated them, freezing their lungs. By morning, the house was silent. The neighbors called the police after noticing the front door ajar. Inside, they found Kayla, Maddie, Sarah, and Jess still sitting around the Ouija board in the living room. Their eyes were wide open, frozen in expressions of terror. The planchette rested in the center of the board, its final message spelled out clearly. Stay. Love these stories? YouTube algorithm suggests that you would like to listen to these stories. Click on the video on the screen.